Hi guys, hello. It's Ola from Cool Mentors IT, and today we will continue talking about scope. So I tried dividing the material into two equal halves, and I thought I was pretty good at dividing things into smaller chunks, but as it turns out, I am not, because the last time we've discussed pretty much almost everything and there isn't much left for today. So this is like a very tiny half for today, but I think maybe it's for the best because Christmas is coming, and so who needs this extra stress, extra studying?
I don't need it.
There is a little bit so we can feel good about ourselves, but no overwhelmed and overburdened. So let's do a mini recap. Last time we talked about scope, and so we now know there is a global scope, and if we declare a variable in a global scope, that variable can be seen anywhere in our program, whereas if we create a variable in the local scope, that variable will be invisible anywhere but its local environment. And also we now know that the local scope can be different. So there is a function scope or a block scope. If we create a variable using a keyword var, it's going to be limited by a function scope. If, however, we create a variable using a let or a const, then there is so-called block scope, and it's signified by the curly braces. So it could be a function, it could be an if statement or for loops, and this is going to be a local scope, block scope for let and a const, whereas for var, only a function scope. So even though there are curly braces, if we create variable using a keyword var, it's not going to be respected by that variable. That's not the end of the story, because there is a possibility of nested functions. So for instance, I've created a variable a that is storing a value of Jess in the global scope. So this is somewhere in the program and it's visible everywhere. It's not limited by the curly braces or a function. And then I've got a function that is storing another variable a, and it's got a local scope. It's variable a storing value of 5, and it's got a local scope. Inside that function, there is a inner function, a nested function, which is also storing a variable a with a value of false. This is another local scope. Within that function, there is yet another function, also with a variable a storing a value of KitKat. So we have only one global scope, but it's possible to have more than one local scope. So far, if I tried console logging a being in that function here, it would print out KitKat to the screen. If there was no variable a in the local scope of this function here, it would go one level up, looking for a variable here in the local scope of the parent function. And if there was a console log in this function here, but no variable a here, it would print out the value of variable a from here. So it would console log false. Then, if there was no variable a in the level up, in the higher function, it would go and would find value of 5 from that variable here, and it would print out 5. If, however, there was no variable a in any of those functions here, and the console log would be in this last function, the most inner function. It would go up and find that variable here with the value of Jess. So it would go around looking for it because it can access any of those that are like higher. So again, it's like your house, but inside the room. You're inside your room and you can go out, but let's say somebody else cannot go inside your room. Let me in, etc., etc. Let's have a look at the code. And so here I've got script. Let's go to the bracket. I would save this one. It might look a little complex, but maybe it is a little complex, but it would show us how this works. So I've created the variable a with the value of 0, and this is our global variable because it's not within any curly braces, it's not inside a function or an if statement or anything else. This is a global variable. We can even mark it as a global variable. And then we've got a function 1. This is the beginning, that's the end of that function. Here I've created variable a again with the value of 1. I put them in strings, but we can use numbers or anything else you'd like. I try console logging it, go variable in function 1 and the value of that variable. Inside function 1 there is a function 2. This function finishes here. Again, same thing, go another variable a, different value and a console log. Inside function 2 I've got function 3. Function 3 is between here. That's the statement of function 3. And again, another variable a, value of 3, console log, variable in function 3, and what variable a program would find here. Then I'm executing all of those functions, and at the very end I'm trying to console log whatever variable is found in a global scope. Little time to analyze, and let's verify if whatever I said before checks out. So I saved it, and now let's refresh the page. Luckily, happily, it's as expected. So I've got variable 1, variable 2, variable 3, all as expected. And a variable in a global scope that has been found is a variable a with a value of 0. So once I tried printing out variable in function 1, it found its local variable with a value of 1. And the same thing happened in function 2. When I tried console logging a value of a, it found the value of variable a from its local scope, the one that is the closest one. And for function 3, it printed out variable in function 3, 3, because it found its local variable with the value of 3. Variable in the global scope has been taken from the beginning of the script, meaning 0. And that is all good. But if I comment this one here, it should theoretically go up, one level up, and look for a value of the variable that is the closest one by the nearest one from its parent. So it's kind of like overriding the value. Let's save this, let's refresh. So again, variable in function 3 found this variable from here with a value of 2, and function 2 found its own value, so 2, and well, variable 1 found its very own local. If we try commenting out this one here, both function 3 and function 2 are finding function 1, and they are finding this local variable from function 1. If I comment also the other one, they're all printing out that variable from a global scope. Make sense?
That makes sense to me.
If they can't find whatever they've been asked to find, they go one level up looking for it. If they can't find it there, they go even higher. And if it's not there, they will go to global scope. That's how it works. What would happen if we do it the other way around? So I would uncomment this, save it. So now we only have variable a within the function 3, but no other variable apart from the global one. And let's refresh the page. So here function 3 is finding its own local variable, but function 2 doesn't have its local variable. Function 1 doesn't have its local variable. It's finding the global one that is available everywhere to any function inside code, because it's in a global scope, and whatever is in the global scope is visible everywhere in the program. If, however, I comment out also our global variable, let's save it, let's refresh, go in uncode reference error, error A is not defined. To find out what happened, we would have to go to sources and have a look on our debugger. We have a look, I've got on line 16, console log variable in function 1 cannot be seen. This already at the very beginning of our code cannot be found, so the whole program stops because it's reading from the top to the bottom. Kind of clear? I'm not confusing too much. This is not as important, we'll get to it later. Let's focus on our console for now. What else for today? Where is the global variable available? It's in the global scope and in all local ranges. So whatever is available globally is available globally, meaning everywhere. But it can be overridden by the same variable in the local scope. So if there is a variable with the same name in the local scope, for that local scope, that variable is going to be more important. So the function will see that variable first, and only if it's not available, it will go look for it someplace else. Where is the local variable available? Well, local variable is available in its local scope and also in the descendant ranges. So like it kind of the local scope becomes kind of a global scope for the function that is level lower, whatever is lower. So it's kind of like it's changing its meaning, because it can be then overridden by the same variable in the local scope. So that local scope that should only be visible in its own function, by its own function, kind of becomes a global scope for this inner function. What's very important to bear in mind is that normally we try creating local scopes. So if you create a variable, it's not good to go global. Whatever is available globally can get out of hand very easily. So when we create our variables, we need to be very conscious of what we're doing and what's our goal. We have to work with it very carefully. And so normally we always try to go local first, make our variables local, and if we need a global variable, then we go and we create global variable, but not the other way around. So normally, even if it's more complicated or more difficult, we try keeping our variables local in the local scope. Because if it's a very tiny program, then it doesn't matter. But if it's a big program, then the problem becomes bigger. And it's very hard to find where the mistake happened. Global variable creates the property of the global object. So maybe if you remember from like the very beginning, a few weeks ago, we talked a little bit about the window object. That is our, for the browser, is the global object. So let's open. Now maybe let's not do it in brackets. Let's just do it in our console. If I do window, it's gonna give me a window with all its properties. If I create a variable a and give it the value of a, then if I try printing out window again, expanding all its properties, you can see I kind of added this new property. So it's like I've created a copy of that variable a, and now it has become a part of a window object. It's one of its properties. So if you do the same thing with let and give it a value of AA, it's not gonna happen. Window B undefined. Window A. So it's like kind of correcting the over eagerness of a var, because we don't actually, if we do need to add like an extra property for the global object, then we can use vars, but normally we try to limit our use of vars and stick to let and const, because as you can see, things happen, unpredicted things happen. Well, it's actually predictable, because now you know that this thing is going to add a property to. Sorry, my cat is crazy. No. So it's like as soon as I press record on the camera, that cat becomes super hyperactive. He would sleep all day and all night. But as soon as I'm trying to record something, he's everywhere. And he wants to be seen and heard. So, where did I leave? What was I? Yeah, so it's kind of predictable, but this is not like something we would normally desire for our program, in our program to happen. So this is not exactly what we had in mind, and so it's always better to use a let or a const, because that's what happens if you do something with var. A variable inside of a function can also be a global variable. So we said that a variable inside a function is always in its local scope, so this is a local variable, but this is not exactly true. It can be visible in a global scope, and it can become a property of the global object. How do you make it happen? Let's say you create a function, say 1, and the only job of this function is to console log, we create a variable c and we give it a name of AAA. Let's close it. Then let's call our function 1 and define. And then if we check, window now has an extra property, meaning we forgot to use a keyword var, let, or a const. And if we do that, this variable is global. Even though it's inside the function, inside the curly braces, it doesn't matter. It is now global, a global variable. And so it became a property of the global window object in the browser. And we can now even like access its value. Normally, if it was with the keyword var, let, or const, you can't access something that is inside a function. So yeah, if you forget to use a var, let, or const in your function, you will create a global variable. And this is only your mistake. This is how the mechanisms of JS work, and so do not forget. And that is pretty much it for today. I told you that it's gonna be easy peasy and pretty short. Thank you.